District Championship Week in high school football. We have 8 Mid-Missouri teams still alive in the postseason battle. Mexico, Fulton, Blair Oaks, Centralia, Father Tolton, West Strand, and Paris. 2 of those teams going head-to-head on Friday night in Wardsville. 11-0 Blair Oaks will host 9-2 Fulton, 2 high-scoring teams. Blair Oaks beat up on Eldon 58-6 last week. Fulton beat Southern Boone 61-48. Our sports writer Tom Leffler joins us. Tom, 3 weeks into the playoffs coming up this Friday night.
You know, already 75% of the teams are done for the year, and it's still 75 degrees out. Something's not right there, but, you know, those 25% left, they've earned it and a chance to move on.
Let's talk about that Blair Oaks-Fulton matchup. 2 teams who have put a pile of points on the board, just scoring at will, really.
Well, first one to 50 wins, maybe 60. But I think Blair Oaks has a definite advantage here because their defense is really good, and they're averaging 54 points a game. Wow. Fulton gave up 48 last week. In their 2 losses, they gave up 126 points. So Blair Oaks averaging 54, you put that all together, they're going to score in the 50s, I think, easily. And their defense is really good without Travis Dean. Fulton's, they've had a good season, but I think it comes to an end.
All right, of course, Fulton's 2 losses coming to Mexico and Hannibal.
Oh, absolutely. 2 good teams.
Much bigger classes, too. As far as Fulton, that Travis Dean injury you talked about, this is a kid who rushed for almost 2,000 yards, new school record, and they've had some pretty good running backs over there at Fulton High.
You bet.
Partially torn ACL. Boy, you would love to see this guy play in this game, but he won't be there. It's a big loss.
It is a big loss, and I was talking to Coach Kelly, and, of course, he only plays offense. He doesn't play defense. And they scored 61 points last week without him.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. So they might have scored 100. I don't know. But, you know, you feel sorry for a kid because he's a senior. For his season to end like that, like you said, close to 2,000 yards rushing, all the great athletes they've had, going back to the McBrides and Galvers. Sure. It's really unfortunate.
We talk about Blair Oaks, and we were at that game last week when Jordan Hare threw 7 touchdown passes, and that is a new school record at Blair Oaks.
He is the Drew Brees of Central Missouri football. I mean, he is that combination of Hare to C.J. Clauser and Adam Shell. My goodness, it's been unstoppable to this point, and I think they'll roll again.
Tom, you remember the beginning of the season. I think that Blair Oaks was a much more run-oriented team under Terry Walker. Coach made some adjustments, don't you think?
Yeah, he's a hard-headed old Dutchman, you know. He likes to run the ball 3 yards in a cloud of dust or turf, whatever it is these days. But he adapted to his talent. Yeah. He really adapted. They still run the ball. Don't get me wrong. They still run it, but their aerial attack, Walker saw what he had with Hare, something special in that combination with Clausen. You got to give that line to because Hare's got to have time.
And you mentioned it. Their defense is so much better now than it was early this season.
I think they've only given up 6 points in the last 4 games. Granted, the competition hasn't been that strong, but that's still impressive.
Yeah. They will play, whoever wins that game, Fulton or Blair Oaks, will play the winner of the Centralia-Wright City game. That game in Centralia this Friday night. And the Panthers are 10-1. They host Wright City, and you got to believe that Centralia will be heavily favored in this one.
I think Centralia, you know, we talk about all the offense with Blair Oaks and Fulton and Blair Oaks defense. Centralia's defense is really good. They've, in 6 of their 11 games this season, a touchdown or less with 4 shutouts. Wow. They can play defense. Their only loss to Mexico, that's the only time they've given up more than 20 points. That was 27-0. Mexico, as we know, is very talented. I look for Centralia not to have too much trouble with Wright City.
And that would set up a matchup, assuming Centralia wins. They would host that next game.
Yeah, either Wright City or Centralia would host either Blair Oaks or Fulton. I'm betting Blair Oaks.
Okay. All right, then you go to the Class 5 defending state champions, the Battle Spartans, coming off that win over Waynesville last week, 49-32. That was a lot of points, and they will host Lebanon this Friday in Columbia.
Yeah, I think Battle won't have any problems. Lebanon beat a Washington team. I got to talk about Washington. They gave up in one game 76 points.
I remember that.
They gave up 76 points and only lost by 3 touchdowns. It was 76-55, 54. And in another game, they scored 84 points, but didn't have a running clock. That was 84-57.
Oh my
they only won by 27 points. You talk about offense. But Lebanon has not played the type of schedule Battle has. Battle's at home. Battle will move on.
All right, moving to Class 4, the Mexico Bulldogs, the only team standing in our viewing area in Class 4. Very interesting matchup in Hannibal. The Pirates maybe their best team they've had in years. They're 11-0. Mexico 10-1. Their only loss coming to Hannibal, and that was only by a touchdown.
Only by a touchdown. You have to give Hannibal the edge, maybe on a percentage basis, 60-40, not the final score, 60% to 40%. But Mexico is awfully good. They play defense. They got a lot of explosive weapons on offense, but Hannibal's awfully good. I look for this to be a very, very good football game.
Yeah, really impressive job what Steve Haig has done there
Yes.
at Mexico in his 2 years as head coach. Great story in Columbia, too. How about the Father Tolton Trailblazers? Chad Masters' team with a school record, 10 wins already. They hadn't won a district game before this season. Now they've won 2, and they will get another game at home against Higginsville. Appears to be a pretty big challenge for Tolton. I understand Higginsville is pretty good.
Yeah, they're both pretty good, and Chad's a friend of mine, and known him for years from his days in Jeff City. Right. But Chad, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Scoring 93 points against MMA. Stop it. Once you hit 70, just stop it. I don't care. Just take a knee or act like you're falling down. But Tolton has had a great season. Their schedule hadn't been that strong. They're 10-1. But Lafayette County is also 10-1. Higginsville. They're also 10-1, so that tells you their schedule hadn't been that strong either because Tolton's hosting this game. Mm-hmm. So by the point system, I like Tolton at home. All
right, we will feature that game on a Football Friday night. Should be very interesting, and Tolton fans will be out in full force. 2 other Mid-Missouri teams in Class 1. Westran plays at Powerhouse Marshall-Lane. The Paris Coyotes get a home game welcoming South Shelby. So, Tom, we've got 8 Mid-Missouri teams still alive here in the postseason. Who do you like this Friday night to move on?
I like Blair Oaks and Centralia in a nice little collision up there at Centralia. 2 teams who could play defense. In my little upset special, I like Mexico to go to Hannibal, beat Hannibal in a very, very close game. Okay. I look for Tolton in a very close game again to beat Higginsville/Lafayette County. And I think Battle will have no problems with Lebanon.
All right. We'll see if that all works out. We will be live at Wardsville. The Falcons take on Fulton. Class 3 District Championship game will be there at 5 and 6 o'clock. And, of course, we'll have all the highlights and scores for you at 10:15 on Football Friday night.